All right, everyone, we are live. Welcome to our sixth episode of KC Reacts. Absolutely, this is amazing. I'm Kevin Hammer,
I'm Chris Barrett.
and we are especially excited for this stream because today we have a special guest. We have Elena with us, better known as the Based Mother.
Hi,
Elena, welcome to the stream.
I'm psyched to be here. Thanks.
This is going to be fun. And the reason, Elena, I'm really excited to have you on is I'm excited to have everyone who is viewing this stream on is because a lot of people are probably not aware of who Riley Dennis is. So if we go back over the decades, we can find examples of where the insanity of gender ideology started popping up here and there, right? It was around the 2000, probably like around the 2015, around, even going back to 2010, where you saw at the time what became known as the SJW. I don't know if you're familiar with that term, but back in the day, we called them social justice warriors. And we're talking, and then what arose on YouTube was the anti-SJW. Among them were individuals that some of them aren't as big anymore, or they've quit, but they were still good. Actually, Blair White started off around that time, and you had many different personalities going after these individuals. And one of these truly off the hinge individuals was Riley Dennis. This guy honestly preached conversion therapy without even realizing it. He said some of the most insane things, including that in the Middle East, you had countries that were trans friendly because homosexual men, one of the things they would do is you were either going to be put in jail, put to death, or you could transition into a woman. So forcing homosexual men to transition so they wouldn't be killed, in Riley's eyes, was being a pro-trans nation. Yeah, Riley was quite the character. And as you can see right here, Riley has not been active on social media for quite some time. I looked up his Instagram, at least the one that I knew of, and there was a post in 2024, a Palestine flag, of course, but before that, this individual hadn't had a post since 2020, and most posts are from like 2018 and before. So just to give you a little bit of background on Riley Dennis, who Riley Dennis is, before we jump into this, because trust me, this is going to be quite the experience for everyone. So with no further delay, are you all ready? You guys, are you ready for us to start these clips?
Let's do it. I can't wait to see the insanity.
All right. Prepare yourself, everyone. This is going to be entertaining. 1 second.
Would you date someone who's trans? Would you date someone who's black? Would you date someone who's fat? Would you date someone who's disabled? Now, honestly, I don't know what your answer is to those questions, but I've met a surprising number of people who would say no to all, or at least some of them. Their argument is that it's just a preference and that you can't control who you're attracted to. I think most of the time that this is brought up, it's in regards to race. I'll link to a couple really good videos in the description about racial dating preferences, but...
So, all right, right off the bat, we have this guy comparing attraction based on race to attraction based on, sexual organs, stuff like that. So right off the bat, we are dealing with an individual who's comparing very unlike things, right? And very much trying to conflate very different things at the end of the day. Elena, I'm going to throw it to you first. What's your first initial take? Chris has had a chance to see Riley Dennis here. What's your first take on Riley Dennis?
My first take is what you said. Stop trying to make trans like normal as you were just born with it, the way you were just born into a black family. Second, being black, fat, or disabled doesn't automatically mean that you're mentally ill, where I see somebody who is trans as automatically having a mental illness, and somebody who, by dissociating with their own actual body and saying that they're, it's wrong and they have to change it. So I'm just not attracted to mental illness off the bat.
Yeah, I've got to back you up, Elena. I mean, gosh, where to start with this? Okay. Let me put it this way. Um, this is the thing that trans people like to do. They like to associate themselves with completely unrelated things. And here's something that I see quite a bit in my political activism. If I am giving a testimony before a Senate or House committee or whatever the case may be, one of the things that is one of their favorite things to always bring up is intersex people, which, by the way, is actually an outdated word. They like using the term intersex, but it's not true. It's not a good word, really, because these are people with developmental sexual disorders. That is the current term, and it is more appropriate because here's the thing:
Mhm.
intersex is something that is still divided up by whether you're male or female. So even if you have any sort of like, what's the word, ambiguous genitalia or whatever the case may
Mm-hmm.
be, it's still divided up on whether you're male or female because they can do the genetic testing and find out exactly what sex you truly are. And so this sort of crap is what transgender people like to do. So in this case, instead of going the intersex route, maybe that wasn't popular at the time that Riley made this. By the way, I love his Adam's apple that shows
I
very
was about
well.
to say, look, bigger, way bigger than mine. That's for sure. You can barely see mine.
Yeah, I don't know. He might be more of a man than I am. I don't
I
know.
know.
But anyway, so but this time, instead he's trying to equate, racism with so-called transphobia or,
Mhm.
being against, a person with a disability or something like that. I'll wrap it up now because I'm going on forever.
Yeah, no,
But
we're
but
gonna
this
get into
stuff
the
is
nitty gritty.
crazy. Yeah, this stuff is
Absolutely. Don't.
crazy.
We're gonna get into that nitty gritty. Because of course, you're gonna discover this as we watch these clips that Riley Dennis is an individual who constantly contradicts himself. You can't help who you're attracted to, but you should.
Mhm.
Right.
Yep.
So, before we go to the next clip, Vinny is in the comments. Hi, Vinny. Great to have you back on here. We look forward to your input during this stream. All right, so now we jump on to the next clip, a continuation of this video, because trust me, it just gets worse. Here we go.
But in this video, I want to talk about our other biases. Let's start with trans people. Would you date a trans person? Honestly? Think about it for a second. Okay, got your answer?
No.
Well, if you said no, I'm sorry, but that's pretty discriminatory. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying you're a horrible person who hates trans people. There was probably a time in my life when I said I wouldn't date a trans person. But since then, I've thought critically about it and changed my mind. I could sit here and show you photos of conventionally attractive trans people. There are definitely trans people who you would never know are trans unless they told you, because they pass for cis. And that might convince some of you. But I think arguing that you would only like a trans person if you didn't know they were trans is a poor argument. I think you could be attracted to any trans person, whether they pass or not. I think the main...
All right, so, honey, Riley Dennis, my dear boy. Someone can dress up as a convincing vampire. That doesn't make them Dracula. That's my first, my first take on that. And I will be honest, I have actually initially met, trans men, quote unquote trans men, women trying to present as men, who initially they did have like some boyish good looks, like especially the facial hair if it's growing out and stuff like that. But that doesn't change the reality that just because you can put on a convincing costume, that doesn't make what you really are. It actually, Elena, it makes me think of that video you shared earlier on X that you made, where you're reading about a quote unquote trans man who complains about gay men rejecting her, right? Once they realize and reach down in those pants and they're like, nah. And I've been called a bigot. I've been called transphobic. And Riley Dennis, by the way, guys, kind of coined a phrase back in the day. It didn't catch on too much, but it was genitalist, basically you're a bigot against certain genitals. Yeah, that Riley Dennis actually he coined that at one point. Um, and and I actually had this thrown at me when I said I would not be with a trans man. They're saying, well, you're valuing a man based on his genitalia. And obviously I'm with my husband at the time we were dating. They said, heaven forbid, what happened if your boyfriend were to get in an accident and lose his penis? And my response was, even if, heaven forbid, my man lost his penis in some accident, he still wouldn't have a vagina. So that's all. That's my quick response to this clip. Elena, I'm going to throw it to you quick. What's your first initial take?
What he said, if you aren't interested in dating a trans person, that that's discrimination. I'll tell you this, you bet it is. Okay. I am very discriminating about who is coming into my bedroom and very discriminating about who I'm attracted to. I'm not going to talk myself into being attracted to you so that you can feel like a real girl. I mean, I'm not attracted to girls at all, real or fake, in any of them. But we should be discriminating and discerning about who we're sleeping with. And to just say, I'm just going to sleep with everybody and everything, which is pansexuality, which is what they're trying to teach children in schools, is unhealthy, terrible for your soul, and terrible for your sexual health. Like it's good for the STDs and the pharmaceutical companies and the therapists you're going to have to go to for the rest of your life to deal with your loneliness, because that's ultimately where it lands you. So yeah, I'm discriminating against you, Riley.
Chris, what's your take?
I'm going to discriminate as well. I mean, first of all, I mean, this is something that's coming up, but he's going to go on and say something because I have watched this, guys. But the thing is, he's going to go on and say that like gay men pride themselves in being like, all grossed out by vaginas and all this type of stuff. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not. I mean, it's a human organ. It's just what it is. I'm not grossed out by it. And yeah, I do know that there's a few gay guys that are kind of like, oh God. But the thing is what's more important isn't whether a person has a penis or a vagina. What is more important is that, a man has a different type of psychology than a woman. And a woman has a different type of psychology than a man. And so I'm attracted to manliness. I'm attracted to that male persona. And I'm sorry, I've seen plenty of these trans men, I mean, it's clear that they're just unhinged women, and in this case, this is an unhinged man, and that's what we're dealing with here. So, I mean, that's kind of my take on it.
Oh, absolutely. And as you said, Chris, we're about to delve further into this insanity. Because, folks, as you're listening to these clips, please listen for how Riley contradicts himself, how he goes back and forth between attraction is a choice, you're a bigot. It's quite amusing. I want to plant that seed in your head, just to keep an eye out for that. So with that, let's move as we get towards Riley Dennis going after the gays and lesbians.
I think the main concern that people have in regards to dating a trans person is that they won't have the genitals that they expect. Because we associate penises with men and vaginas with women, some people think they could never date a trans man with a vagina or a trans woman with a penis. But I think that people are more than their genitals. I think that you could feel attraction to someone without knowing what's between their legs. And if you were to say that you're only attracted to people with vaginas or people with penises, it really feels like you're reducing people just to their genitals. You're kind of objectifying them, but you're thinking of them more as genitals than objects. So I guess you're kind of genitalifying them. Anyway, my point is we have implicit biases that we were raised with or that we developed over time, and they can be hard to get rid of. And I think...
All right. So notice, first of all, he's talking about the biases that we develop over time, and we can train ourselves to get rid of them, right? Okay, people, what does that sound like to you? Does that not sound like conversion therapy? Does that
but
not
even
sound
for
like
straight
conversion
people
therapy?
now,
You have an attraction, right? You have an attraction that you've developed, and is Riley Dennis saying, over time. Well, you can change that. That sounds like conversion therapy. Yet at the same time, and we'll see this later, Riley Dennis does actually go say how conversion therapy is wrong, but just said this. Trust me, folks, it really gets entertaining in a sad fashion and an infuriating fashion. And furthermore, yeah, sex, and then I'll throw it to you, Chris. Sex is not just skin deep. Sex goes so much deeper than our skin. It's not, sex is far from the saying that beauty is only skin deep. Sex is far beyond, and in my opinion, sex isn't just more than skin deep. Sex goes all the way to the soul. All right?
Yeah.
We are spiritually different beings, men and women, in my personal opinion. So I'll add that in there. But Chris, I'm going to throw it to you quick. What's your take on this little clip?
Well, this is why I said that, there's more to a man than a penis. There's more to a woman than a vagina. And, this man is sitting here trying to make it sound like we're the reductionist ones. But really, when it gets down to it, that's exactly what he's doing. He's being the reductionist, turning people into, their genitalia. It's like, no, you don't understand that there is more to being a man than an appearance. There is more to being a woman than an appearance. I mean, I've met very effeminate men, I've met very masculine women. But at the same time, they are still men and they are still women. And then there's beautiful women like Elena, you know, I mean, who, are like the epitome of femininity and like a strong woman. And I absolutely love that, and then, there's like super masculine guys. I mean, we vary, but this person is really talking about this in like such a way that it's just amazing that he is accusing us of being the reductionists because we aren't.
Well, I'm going to jump on that quick, but first, Elena, what's your take here?
Yeah, it's the ultimate gaslight. These people are teaching children that they're in the wrong body and that their genitals are wrong, and then accusing us of reducing people to their genitalia. And I do want to say though, you said earlier, Chris, about you're not grossed out by vaginas. Well, you know what? I am. I don't want any part of it. I mean, I'm not going there. I'm not going there with my hands. I'm not going there with my face. None of it. Not with a 10-foot pole. Thank you very much. So you can't just make me not, like, you can't make me want to eat, mushrooms. I don't like them. It's not happening.
No, Elena, I love you for that. I love you for that so much because it's right. So I actually, full disclosure, I was actually once studying to be a sexual health therapist. So I'm not grossed out by the vagina. My body has no physical reaction to seeing it. It's like National Geographic to me. It's to be honest, So Riley Dennis is very accusatory, but I will say, Riley, there is a point because attraction is reductionist. It is, right? We have selective attractions in general. We do tend to, right? Like we do. Like, for example, I'm attracted to a man. I'm primarily attracted to men who have, like, I don't know, beards and hairy chests. What does that reduction, right? That's reducing my options, right? That would be reducing options, right? Being attracted to muscles over heavier set, or preferring one at least to the other. Attraction itself is about reducing from a broad population, a broad options, reducing down to what you find most attractive. So attraction is reductionist in that degree. And yes, it is reducing down the genitals because I'm sorry, even if a quote unquote trans man gets a lower half surgery, I'm not attracted to ground meat. All right. So
I just can I jump in for just a
Yeah,
second, Kevin?
absolutely.
I really don't disagree with you. I see what you're saying, but the thing is Riley is making it about us being only focused on genitals, which
Yeah,
like I
absolutely.
said is not true,
No.
because there is way more to a woman than
Bless you.
genitalia. There's way more, bless you, Alina,
Thank you.
there is way more to a man than genitalia. I mean, it's a whole
Yeah.
psyche. It's everything, and for me, I mean, I'm like you, Kevin. It's like, I'm attracted to maleness, and
Me too.
but for sexual, yeah, and the same as Elena. Oh my God, we're all attracted to men here.
We're
So,
all bigots. Oh my goodness.
and so anyway, but the thing is that this to me, when I said reductionist, I guess the reason I phrased it that way is because I have heard this trope from trans
Yeah.
people, talking about being a genitalist, or what's the other one? Oh, genital fetishist.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
the more
one.
popular one now.
Right. That's the one that I love. It's great. But kind of to the point of something that Elena talked about that drives me nuts about this bullshit, I'm sorry, forgive my French, is being pushed on kids now.
Hmm.
And that is a huge problem. I mean, we're talking about this right now more, a little bit more from an adult perspective, and how we don't appreciate this stuff. But you have to remember that this crap is actually being taught to
Yeah.
kids.
And to quickly jump on that, then we're going to go to the next clip. I want to add to that, Chris, is keep in mind when this video, Riley Dennis originally produced this video, I think around 2016, around 2017. We're talking a time when these types of videos, people weren't really aware of them as much. So you better believe children were seeing this. It was
Oh,
coming up in
absolutely.
feeds and stuff like that,
Yeah.
which quickly, and then we'll go to the next clip. Elena, I think Chris and I need to have you back on to watch clips from a show called Queer Kid Stuff.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is
Sure.
disturbing. It is disturbing. But let's deal
Wow.
with this one. Let's deal with one nut at a time.
Oh.
So let's jump to that next clip
Nice.
with Riley Dennis.
And I think this can be especially prominent within the queer community. Gay men often pride themselves on being disgusted by vaginas, and the same goes for lesbian women with penises. It's difficult because some queer people have built their sexual identities on these repulsions, but I don't think they're innate at all. If you met someone who was extremely attractive, had a great personality, but didn't have the genitals that you wanted, you might be surprised to find that it isn't a deal breaker. As someone who is trans and gay, sometimes people ask me with a very accusatory tone if I would date a girl with a penis, because there's this stereotype that trans lesbians are just predatory cis men creeping on cis women. But the thing is, I absolutely could be attracted to a woman with a penis. I could be attracted to any woman, cis or trans. If I find you attractive, I don't care what you have down there. But we know that...
All right. So right there, did Riley Dennis not just say that he does not believe that attraction where genitalia is concerned is innate at all? But at the same time, Riley Dennis is one of those that preach you can't help who you love. Love is love. You can't help what you're attracted to. You see what I mean? Riley Dennis, and watching this now, almost a decade after these videos were made, it even highlights even more after all the chaos that followed, just how insane this individual was. And yes, Vinny, I know that's what they call pansexual. Basically, pansexual, for those that don't know, is basically you will screw every other letter of the alphabet soup. All right, that's what pansexual means, to simplify it. But still, that is insanity. In one moment, he says that you cannot help who you're attracted to, you can't help attraction, and then he says that attraction where genitalia is concerned is not innate and it can be unlearned. All right, Elena, I'm gonna throw it to you. What's your initial take on this?
So he's talking about himself. I could sleep. I like men with vaginas, and I like women with penises, and I like everybody, blah blah blah. And what I don't understand is how you could sit and say that. Okay, you do you, Riley. You want to jump on everything that moves, go right ahead. But why are you trying so hard to convince me to want to sleep with you and everybody else? I mean, there is a desperation, doing this with the pretty background and looking all girly and everything is smiles and friendly. Like, this is all such a positive conversation, but there's this quiet underlying desperation to be accepted, to convince somebody like me that, like, there's as if there's a light bulb that's going to go off on my head and go, oh, the world is my oyster and I had no idea. I mean, it's really it's so sad that he feels the need to try to convince us. And I've been saying this for a long time, that the reason they went after the kids is they got lonely on the fringe and they want to build up their population and become a more mainstream part of society. And this is part of that strategy.
Yep. Chris.
Yeah. So the funny thing is he calls himself gay, which I actually didn't pick up the first
Correction,
time.
lesbian actually is what Riley Dennis then later on, because anyways, I'll let you go on.
I didn't pick up on that. So so he's a straight dude. Okay. All right, so we know what's going on here now. All right, I guess I just didn't pick up on that, and I didn't remember it or whatever, because it has been a couple days since I watched the video. But the thing is here is, we are talking about like pansexuality and that sort of thing, but what we're really dealing with here, because pansexuality is just kind of like a made up bullshit type of term, and what we're dealing with here is a bisexual individual. Okay. I mean, no offense to anyone who's bisexual, but that's what we're dealing with here. And, pansexualism is just something that's basically an attempt to be trans inclusive. I mean, that's really all it is. And so that's what Riley is trying to push on us here, is that because he is evidently bisexual, maybe straight. I don't know. I have come across this. I don't know if you are familiar with the so-called queer majority, Kevin. But this is a group that is largely run by bisexuals that pushes the idea that actually all of us, Elena and you, Kevin, and me, are actually all bisexuals. We just don't know it.
Yeah, no, I know. Right, but I bet at the same time they'd preach in other ways. You can't tell someone their identity, right?
Oh, no, they absolutely are like that. Yes, absolutely.
So, guys, when we go into this next clip, everyone, I want you to keep the clip we just watched in mind, right? I know they've overlapped a little bit. It's just how the editing came out. But keep what Riley Dennis, what he just said in this last clip, that sexual attraction to sexual organs, to genitalia, is not innate, right? Keep that in mind, that's what Riley Dennis just said as you watch the next part of this video. Sorry, video file. Just need to, there we go. All right.
That sexual orientations are more innate than learned. They're more nature and less nurture. Gay conversion therapy has been proven not to work, but you can unlearn your own prejudices. It just takes time and conscious effort. And the way that we talk about potentially dating trans people has a lot in common with the way we discuss other preferences. Saying that you're...
Right there. Sexual attraction is more innate. Basically saying you can't help who you're attracted to. While in the last clip, he said that sexual attraction, when genitalia is involved, is not innate. How do you square this? Chris, I'm gonna throw this one to you first. I mean, I saw your head just about.
My head just about exploded, and I was at the doctor's office today because I have like really high blood pressure, and this probably just made my blood pressure go like to stroke level. I mean, my God, it's like, so you're sitting here telling me that sexual orientation is an innate thing, which that part I agree with. I really do think so, because I doubt if Elena chose to be straight. I doubt if you chose to be gay, Kevin. It's just the way we felt. But then this idiot basically equates it to some sort of preference that can be changed. So I mean, that's why my head wanted to explode and have a freaking stroke, because I'm like, oh my God, it's like you just totally contradicted yourself in that statement right there. And ugh, okay, anyway, I can't wait for Elena to explode on this
No, I
one.
absolutely.
Yeah, no, I'm actually feeling what, like, you're so right that this is just conversion therapy.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
I never really imagined in my life before somebody trying to convert me to being pansexual or gay, or like, and what it must have been like for people, gay people undergoing conversion therapy, and how anti, like, just how against my nature it would be for somebody to try to convince me. I could imagine being convinced to be abstinent if I was convinced that, promiscuity was immoral or whatever, but you still are not going to change my nature and and who I am and who I'm
Absolutely.
attracted to. And again, these people go after children, they go after the lonesome, they go after the dejected, people who need a community, they don't have friends, and they will buy into any religion that catches them first. And
Hmm.
this is a sick, twisted net that people get caught in. And this one is extra dangerous because it's hard enough to get your mind out of a cult, but once you've altered your body too, it's real trouble.
Oh, absolutely. And you both, when we talk about sexual orientation, and here's what I say: I do believe that sexual orientation is innate, the base sexual orientation, right? Attraction to a sex, to another sex, right, or the same sex. But with that said, I also believe that with the right propaganda and methods of persuasion, you can sure the heck confuse the hell out of someone, especially a child.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that, for example, is the queer kids stuff that I mentioned earlier, which we definitely have to watch. This individual, what she does, and of course she identifies as non-binary, if I remember correctly, she describes being gay as a boy loving another boy. And I despise that description, and here's why. Because children, they think of love in a very different way, right? What she means is a male being attracted to another male, but she's saying a boy loving another boy. So a little boy who hears that and has a best friend that he loves who is a boy will interpret that as, well, does that mean I'm gay? And then there's also things, speaking of
Hmm.
persuasion. I met a man that I had a very detailed conversation with about his drug use, right? He was addicted to meth, and he admitted that even though he is only attracted to women in his sober mind, he did sleep with men to get drugs. He was that addicted to where he was willing to do any act that was requested of him to either get the drugs or get money for the drugs. So once again, I believe sexual orientation is innate, at the base level, at the base level, of course, but I do believe that you can still confuse or manipulate the hell out of someone.
Hmm. That's interesting, Kevin. Yeah, I mean, they do talk about, gay, that someone is like gay for pay. And I guess that's kind of like what you're talking about with the person that you knew that was addicted to meth.
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
And
So
if I can add, like, it kind of also talks about, like, what I'm talking about is with a cult victim.
Yeah.
That those people, in addition to, like, say, a meth head, God forbid, they're vulnerable.
Yes.
To
I think that
ideologies. Yeah.
I think that's the better way of putting it, honestly, Elena, is like, yeah, the people can be confused into doing certain things for sure, but like Kevin said, I think that the ultimate sexual orientation, like what you actually,
Mhm.
are attracted to, that is very innate. But maybe someone like Riley here is actually playing on that confusion that some people can experience.
Mhm.
And that actually makes this even more uh what's the word I'm trying to think of
Sinister.
here? Sinister. Thank you,
Yeah.
Elena. Yes, that actually makes this even more sinister. So I mean, quite honestly, I mean, maybe Riley thinks he's doing the right thing. I don't know. But, quite honestly, and not to take this on too much of a religious track, but I am a very religious person. This seems to be a human being who is very, very influenced by evil,
Oh yeah,
plain and
unquestionably.
simple.
Well, yeah, where Elena said sinister, in my mind, just straight up evil came to mind.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But speaking of the straight up evil, let's continue down this insane rabbit hole of just disgust. All right, so we're moving on to the next clip of this video, and trust me, folks, it does not get any better. All right, let me just find that one. Sorry, 1 second.
Effort. And the way that we talk about potentially dating trans people has a lot in common with the way we discuss other preferences. Saying that you're not attracted to fat people isn't innate. It's informed by a society that tells you that being thin is ideal. Everything in the media you consume is bombarding you with messages that skinny is beautiful and fat is ugly. And even the nicest of people absorb these messages to some degree. But again, if you find someone attractive and really enjoy spending time with them, there's no reason why their weight should be a factor. Especially since we know that the relationship between weight and health is extremely complex, and you really can't make any moral judgments on a person based on their weight. And lastly, let's talk about disabled people. Disabilities come in a very wide range, from being deaf to being in a wheelchair to only having one arm, and I think it's pretty ridiculous to say that you couldn't be attracted to any person who has any of those disabilities. Disabilities can happen to anyone. Someone you're extremely attracted to today could become disabled tomorrow, and that shouldn't make your attraction to them disappear. So if it does, it might not be because of them, but rather because you have some preconceived ideas about disabled people that are just inaccurate and harmful. Unsurprisingly, this is another case of the media telling you that a certain group isn't attractive. Disabled people are rarely romantic leads. Their stories in movies and TV shows are often tragic, but that doesn't reflect the reality that disabled people can be happy and have dating lives and be attractive. Now, if you're not attracted...
All right, so once again, we get back to the conflation, right? Now, this is, like I said, this is the insanity, right? Because someone gaining weight, someone becoming disabled isn't a denial of reality. It's something that happened. Believing that you can genuinely change your sex, that you can be the opposite sex, that is a denial of reality. That is a denial of our nature as a species. And I specifically chose that word because you'll have people that, and I'm sure y'all have heard this argument, when you talk about how sex is, innate. They'll be like, well, there's these tree frogs in the Amazon that can change sex. Well, we're not frogs, honey. So it's this is the insanity, right? But there's also the fact that even let's get to obesity and touch on this a bit. Obesity and that thing, of course, and disability, right? It's also not wrong though for you to have desires in life that basically narrow your options for dating. So say you're someone who's an avid mountain climber and hiker, right? Well, if you're an avid mountain climber, hiker, go to the gym 6 days a week, there's a good chance if you want to share that, especially the hiking part, with someone in your life that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, you're probably not going to date someone in a wheelchair or someone who's obese. But that's also still not a denial of reality. Riley Dennis, once again, trying to conflate what can be done to the body, something that happens, to an absolute denial of reality. Elena, I'm going to throw it to you first.
So that is the perfect example of, what you're talking about, somebody who's active, not wanting to necessarily, or going out looking for a partner who's in a wheelchair. And what Riley said is that is making a moral judgment against disabled people. So what he's doing here is adding this emotional guilt thing.
Yeah.
And that is, again, what I see them doing with everything. If you don't want to sleep, I don't want to sleep with a woman pretending to be a man, I should feel guilty about that. There's something wrong with me. I'm making a poor moral judgment. That kind of emotional manipulation is like the cornerstone of this dude's arguments.
Mm-hmm. Chris.
Yeah, so this is just a further example of what I was talking about earlier. This is trans people using others to push their agenda. Because Riley honestly doesn't give a crap, I'm sure, about overweight people or disabled people or anything like that. I mean, I hate to make those assumptions about people without actually knowing them, but I've known enough of these trans people to know that that's exactly what he's doing. He is just using people, gaslighting us, and that is exactly what's going on here.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
100%. So we've got one more clip, then we're going to go into a broader conversation. So please, especially those in the comments, those watching, comment now, because part of this conversation, when we go into the broader conversation, I'm going to be referencing those comments, just so we can get you involved as well. All right, so with that, we're going to go on to our final clip of this insanity.
You're not attracted to someone, you're not attracted to them. I'm not going to tell you that you have to be attracted to this fat person or that trans person or that disabled person. But the more you work at unlearning your own prejudices, the more you'll be able to see people from these groups as people rather than tired stereotypes. Unlearning our own biases doesn't happen overnight, and I don't have a step-by-step instruction guide for you. But I think if you can accept that these prejudices exist in all of us, even you can identify them when they come up and work to change how you think about them. It will most likely be a long, slow process, but I think it's worth it. Because these dating preferences are ultimately harmful to people who don't fit into your box of what a conventionally attractive person looks like. It makes people feel isolated, alone, and unwanted to hear that they're universally unattractive to people. I don't think there's anyone out there who somebody doesn't find attractive. We're sold this image of the conventionally attractive person, but in reality, all kinds of people around the world are constantly dating, having sex, finding people attractive, getting married. It's not only the conventionally attractive who find love or have sex. So by working on ourselves to dispel that idea, we can make the world a more welcoming and loving place for everybody, no matter how they look. This video is a part of my Feminism with Riley series that I'm doing in collaboration with Everyday Feminism, a website dedicated to helping you stand up to and break down everyday oppression. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos about various feminist topics. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.
I'm
I am just so genuinely glad, first of all, that this is over. But I'm gonna sum up. This is me summing up this last clip that we saw, right? If you're not attracted to someone, that's okay. But if you're not attracted to someone, you're a bigot. Oh, insert feminism. That is me summing up this last clip. Chris, I'm gonna throw it to you because you almost fell out of your seat on that last one.
You're so right. You're so right, Kevin. I mean, seriously, this was the most insane sort of dumb BS that I think that I have ever heard. And you're right. It's fine if you're not attracted to someone, but if you're not attracted to someone, you're a terrible human being. And it's like. It goes to everything with transgenderism, man. I mean, seriously, there is no logic behind it. It's not a logical way of life. It's just such a lie. And what is like really sad about it is that this crap is being introduced to kids. I have to go back to that because that is my biggest problem with this. It really is. And so what's happening is you've got a moronic person like this sharing this to other adults, and then these adults, are like, oh, well, that sounds reasonable because they're idiots. And anyway, they're going to go ahead and share that stuff with kids. And, it's like, no, this is not okay at all. None of this is okay. None of it. None of it really is.
Mm,
I mean, I don't even care if anyone wants to hate my guts over this, but I'm not okay with trans adults either. You know, uh, Plain and simple. All of this is just stupid, you know.
So, Elena, good news. You're not, it's okay that you're not attracted to women, but bad news, you're also a bigot because you're not attracted to women, slash feminism now. Elena, take it from there.
All right. Well, according to Riley, I don't see them as people. That when I meet somebody, if I'm not sexually attracted to them, I don't see them as a person. Do you know how many people I interact with every day? I don't imagine what they would be like in bed. Every single person. Like, that's a sick way to go through life. I'm sorry. Who's got the time for that? Then you add in the facts, like, you know, about people, everybody's attracted to all the same people. You know what? No, they're not. Tom Brady, the whole world thinks Tom Brady is gorgeous, and I can look at him and say that is a handsome man. He does nothing for me. Nothing. He's a dud. He's the most boring man alive as far as I'm concerned. Right? Well, you can't explain why. I can look at a beautiful woman. I look at Melania Trump. I'm like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. And I want her wardrobe. Do I have sexual thoughts about her? No. Like, this is so nuts that the only way to see somebody as a person is to think of them as sexual. And then he says, I made a little list. I'm almost done. And then he says, it's a long, slow process to change. Yes, that is called brainwashing and indoctrination.
Mm-hmm.
Then he says, if they don't check your box, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be vulgar, this guy doesn't have one. He has no idea what it means. I was flipping out watching that whole clip.
Oh, that's why this last clip I made a bit longer as it is to take up more, because honestly, this last clip I feel highlighted better than anything the insanity that was when he was more involved, Riley Dennis. And, I can say that we're fortunate that Riley Dennis is not out there currently making this content and trying, at least that we know of, out there making the content. But Riley Dennis did play a big role in pushing this onto our culture and onto children. And Riley Dennis also played a role in perpetuating the idea of TERFs, right? Trans exclusionary radical feminists. So basically, women who said, no, we do not want men in our spaces, were labeled TERFs and bigots. And Riley Dennis definitely played a role in pushing us to that. So yeah, and folks, we are in the general conversation now, so please comment. We have a comment from Thurg that, in reference to attraction, I'm assuming Thurg's comment is, attraction is all right as long as you feel guilty about it. And and that is another good summing up of what Riley Dennis just said in that last clip. Absolutely.
I guess so. And I want to clarify one thing, because I did say I'm not okay with trans adults, and here's the reason why. The reason I want to clarify this for anyone who's watching is not because, I don't I do have a little bit of a libertarian streak in me. So if this is what you really want to do to yourself, you go right ahead and do it. But I don't have to honor your pronouns. I don't need to see you go, especially if you're a man going into women's spaces. I don't need to see your male ass in a women's restroom or a locker room. I don't need to see you as a man in female sports. If you want to just walk down the street and pretend you're a woman, fine. You go right ahead and do that. I'm not going, and as long as you're a halfway decent person, I'll treat you fine. But I'm not going to ever treat you as if you are a real woman. Period. Ever.
Yeah, I used to
Absolutely.
work with a a man who one day he walked into work and he was wearing like the same skirt that I had. And it was in a corporate office, and I was like, okay. And then he would go in the ladies' room, and this was in Massachusetts. And and I worked with him, and I knew him, and I felt comfortable enough. I just wasn't going to say anything. You know what I mean? When he was around, I would go walk to like the next apartment and go to the ladies' room so that I didn't have to run into him, because I was never going to do anything. I was going to be polite. Um, and that was at a time back then, but this was at least 10 years ago, 12 years ago, before this went exploded and became so in your face, and they weren't after the children yet and all that. So I would still refer to this person as she or her in a meeting, to just not ruffle everybody's feathers and to be polite. I'm done
Yeah.
with that. I'm not
And
playing your game anymore.
Elena, you just illustrated perfectly how this went downhill, how this snowball went, right? This is how they target polite people. They target a polite society. Out of politeness, you said she in reference to this man. Out of politeness, you you allowed this man to take a space that is yours, such as a bathroom, right? And out of politeness, you removed yourself from a space that was made for you in our society and took yourself somewhere else,
Yes.
right? That's what they were counting on, and that's how they got their claws in so aggressively. So, and that's not yelling at you. You're just trying to be a nice person.
Yeah, no,
And
I know.
that is at the end of the day. And we see this reflected in the targeting of children, right? Because if a child says that they're confused about their gender and they might be trans, right? And a parent doesn't agree with it and go along with it, the first thing these parents hear is, well, would you rather have a trans child or a dead child? So right off the bat, they're playing on fear, they're playing on the heart, and they know that this is a successful way to approach it, because historically it has been. When you try to, one thing is true when it comes to this: they are skilled at manipulating the better nature of man. That is unquestionably true.
Yeah.
Well, let's think about this for a second too, because you were talking about, children saying that they were trans. And really, the stuff dealing with children is what bothers me the most. But the thing is I think all of us here are old enough that we can remember back when we were children. Did any of you know what transgenderism was? I sure as hell didn't.
No.
No. Mm-mm. And so if a child is claiming to be trans, that's a failure in parenting right there. Or that's one thing. I'm not saying it's always that. But if a child is claiming to be trans, then the other thing is they've been indoctrinated somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going on there. The only reason I said failure in parenting is because I've seen plenty of parents that support this stuff. Now, I've also seen plenty of parents who don't support it. And so I want those parents out there who do have so-called trans kids to understand I'm not blaming you for this. That's not what I'm saying whatsoever, because it isn't your fault. What is probably the fault is that we've got a society that is sick and is pushing this stuff on kids. So there is no way on earth a kid knows what transgenderism is
Mm-hmm.
unless they've
Oh,
been taught about it.
absolutely.
And
There's definitely no such thing as a trans child in that regard, as we always say, most assuredly. So, I do want to jump to the comments quick. Vinny, thank you again. So he said, I agree, Chris. Guys doing this are basically just drag queens who don't want the show to end at night. The women doing trans just feel like they're being treated better if they lived like a man. Now, what's interesting about that last part is the women claiming to be men and trying to live as men. The interesting is that there's actually a growing number of videos of that not working out for them and them experiencing a very different world. First of all, someone not caring when you cry as much, right? It's not giving in to your tears, expecting you to fight, expecting more, expecting you to actually, when you run your mouth, to actually be able to back it up. And there's been and we should do an episode on this. There are a number of women who decided they wanted to help a male friend in their life find a date on an app, right? They looked at their profile and they're like, well, let's change your pic. Let's do this. And they took over the app. Within like a few days, they've all said they were basically brought to tears because when they approached women, they got horrific response, all this stuff. There's even been studies done where they took, where they took attractive men and attractive women and sent them out into the world, both attractive, objectively attractive. The attractive woman got more attention than the attractive man and was able to get more numbers, able to get more, hit on more, that reception. And quote unquote trans men learn a hard lesson when they start trying to, present as men, parade as men, that it's not as good as they thought it was.
Mhm.
Oh Lord, no, no. I mean, being a human is difficult, but there are just certain expectations of men in our society, and I just don't think that these trans men are so-called trans men, because they're not men, they're women. Understand what it is like to actually be a man. And there is a lot of pressure on you as a man, because you're expected to, even I as a gay man, and same with you, Kevin, we're while women are expected to be kind of like nurturers and protectors to a certain degree, men are absolutely expected to be like major protectors, to the
Mhm.
extent that we're willing to give up our lives for the people that we love and that sort of thing. And that is not something that these people understand, whatsoever, because that is the true nature of manhood. We are expected to be the absolute protectors.
You know,
Elena, I got a question for you. I want to
yeah.
toss this at you because Chris and I have discussed this. I mentioned this observation. And I want to know if you've ever observed this. When a trans person gets angry or upset, they revert to their default settings. And what I mean by that is you hear, for example, with that trans woman, right, in GameStop, it's ma'am, right? That anger, that willing to be violent. And when a trans man gets upset, so a woman pretending to be a man, the tears start coming and the emotions start coming. So that's just been my observation when I've seen trans individuals get upset, not 100% of the time, of course, there's always exceptions, but in general, at least 90% of the time, when I've seen trans individuals get upset, they revert to the default setting of the sex they actually are. Elena, have you ever observed that personally?
I've seen a lot of it online, and I have seen a little bit of it in person. Yes, and that is absolutely true. Even the one person I'm thinking of is who I spent a significant amount of time with was non-binary, which is another part of this conversation that we have completely, because we're bigots, left out. And that person was definitely defaulting to her girlhood when she was upset about something. It was a little bit tantrumy, totally girly, totally the behaviors of a 20-year-old girl. Young woman. And so in my limited in-person experience, that is exactly what I've seen. And I hope I never encounter the "it's ma'am" type, because there is nothing scarier. As a woman, it is very scary to encounter an angry man who is coming at you. Like it's a tremendous. It might as well be a bear. It's a tremendous physical threat when a man is unhinged and coming at you.
Right,
Oh,
exactly. And I mean that's the thing. It's like these men who are pretending to be women have lost all understanding of what it's like to be a good man. I mean, that's kind of how I see it, because a good man would never do that to a woman.
I,
And
mhm,
but the thing is these guys will absolutely do that sort of stuff and have no problem with it. And
mhm,
that is just completely sickening to me, because we are different. Men are bigger, we're stronger, we have bigger lungs, we have bigger hearts, all that type of stuff, and women, are a little bit more, smaller than us and that sort of thing. And,
mhm,
so for a guy who's pretending to be a man to sit there and be like, I am a woman, and yell that type of crap at at an actual woman, I mean, that's completely unacceptable. Completely
And I
unacceptable.
want to add that it's a
oh,
little extra scary because
absolutely.
it has like this like John Wayne Gacy feel to it on top of it. It's not just like a man coming at
Mhm,
you; it's a man in a basically a clown costume, threatening you. It's got to be mind blowing. But again, I think there's a lot of just obviously there's detachment from reality, and that comes with other types of mental
mhm,
problems. If I can comment for a second on where we were a moment ago about these young women who they become men or they think they're becoming men, and then it's a feminism problem. And I love that Riley Dennis is promoting feminism, which is hilarious because modern feminism is poison. So what it's done is it's turned young women into, first of all, they hate men. So I'm not sure why they would want to become men, because men are toxic and bad, and so they become this version of men that they want men to be, which is a female, feminized, emotional, that act man who acts more like a woman. And then the women who stay women in this realm of people who agree with all of this, they sort of want to masculinize, and they hate women also. They hate that
mhm,
nurturer, that provider, that soft femininity that it characterizes women, that I wish I
mhm,
was more like, because I'm a little like, and they hate women, they hate men. And that when you just start hating everything, you end up, I don't know, just in a complete state of confusion
mhm,
and absence, a void of any real identity. And then somebody like Riley Dennis comes in and is like, oh, I'll fix you. I got something for you. And here we are.
mhm.
Yeah.
Elena, one of my favorite descriptions of feminism actually is you touched on it, but you touched on two different effects of modern feminism, of course. I feel like modern feminism, where the feminization is really happening, is it's trying to feminize men. But interestingly enough, modern feminism, what it really did was it took the most negative um, behaviors that we often associate with men from the past and taught women to pursue them.
Right.
Choosing career over family, being sexually promiscuous, those types of things, right? We
Mhm.
associated them with a guy. In the past, we associated them with players, with men who no woman should marry, right?
Yeah.
But feminism taught women that that's exactly what they should be. They should choose career over family, reject, basically ignore family, even if they have them. And of course they should be absolute sexual creatures, just being promiscuous. I do want to go to a comment quick. Zio Gold, I assume, said, "Isn't Riley Dennis a self-hating man?" Chris, this I want to throw at you though, because I don't. So I don't think that Riley Dennis is necessarily a self-hating man. I think Riley Dennis very much knows he's a man, but what he is primarily is a predator. Chris, what's do you feel like Riley Dennis is a self-hating man per se?
Yeah, well, maybe there's a little bit of self-hatred, but there is, I will say to the commenter, there is a little bit of a difference between the trans people who are homosexual and the trans people who are heterosexual. There's a little bit of a difference. And
Mm.
the homosexual ones, I do think, have a little bit of self-hating stuff going on. I mean, at least that's been my
Mm,
experience. Maybe I'm wrong, but that, that has been my experience so far. With the heterosexual ones, which I'm guessing that's what Riley actually is. Um, they aren't so much self-hating men. They are exactly what you said, Kevin. They're predators, is what they are. Because you're probably not going to see a homosexual man who, for whatever reason, feels so bad about being gay that he thinks he needs to turn himself into a woman, probably trying to press himself onto women in some
mm,
sort of way. I'm not saying that what they're doing is necessarily good. I mean, it's actually very bad. I mean, they need to be more comfortable in their own skin. And so that's why I think that a lot of this stuff needs to be solved through therapy and psychiatry and not surgery and hormones. But on the flip side, with these straight people, and I'm not saying it's every single one of them, because that isn't true either, but largely, um, these are predatory men. And, I mean, I actually know someone in my life. I'm not going to say his name, obviously, because that would be a stupid thing to do. But I do know someone in my life. He had a wife, two kids, and he decided that he was going to become a woman.
mm.
And one of the things that tipped me off that there was something like really creepy about him is I was in an amusement park here in Kansas City, and this is before he fully transitioned. Anyway, at this amusement park, he was there by himself with his two kids and my brother and sister-in-law. He decided that it was necessary for him to come up to me and pull down his shirt and show me his bra strap that he had on.
So,
Excuse my language here, guys, but what the fuck?
Yeah,
so
You
women
know?
don't do that. Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I got a question for both of you. And after I ask it, I'll throw it to Elena first. And then Chris, because Chris, you may have more because I know we've been in similar circles. But there is a theory behind some of the trans identity that doesn't get a lot of attention. And in the past, it would be hit as hate speech right away, unfortunately. But it is a discussion to be had because I've actually observed conversations about it myself. And that is that when it comes to the trans women, so men who end up identifying, saying they are women, there has been some interviews with such individuals that have at least hinted or at least given the direction of looking into what's called sissification adult films. And what that
Mm.
is it's a certain type of pornography, sexual adult content. A man starts watching, and it usually starts off with a female being present, an actual woman, that's degrading him, and then slowly over time sissifies him and gets him to act and dress like a woman.
Yep.
Now, there have been actual interviews with trans individuals who have mentioned that exposure to this content was part of their experience in their lives, and then they came out as trans, right? So these men then came out as trans women after watching this specific type of adult content. Elena, have you ever heard of that? Because like I said, it's been suppressed. You can get hit talking about it. I hope this stream doesn't, but you can.
No, no, this is new. Thanks for putting this in my head now. So what I think here is, hey, you want to watch something, if it's all adults on the screen, whatever it is that floats your boat, have at it. So what I'm hearing here is that they're taking something that turns them on in private and they want it all the time. So now I'm going to just take this thing and it's going to be everywhere. So putting on these women's clothes turns me on, and that's why I'm doing it. And now I'm going to go into the ladies' room dressed like this, and I'm going to be turned on while I'm in there. And maybe one of those ladies will give me a dirty look, and that'll really get me going, because that's what he wants to be sissified in every moment of his life. Am I onto something here?
Yeah, and
Oh,
that's part of it. So, Chris, I'll throw it to you.
yeah. Actually, Elena, I'm kind of on the same page as you. This is a little bit new to me, so it's great that our brains have been poisoned by Kevin. Thank you.
Every time.
So I know, right? There I am exposing people to, but all right. So I want to go to the comments quick.
But
Oh,
on a serious level, though,
yeah.
because I was just joking. But on a serious level, that kind of makes sense to what I was talking about with the person that I was discussing, because I mean, it's like Elena said, a woman isn't going to come up to me and pull down her shirt to show me her bra strap. That's just not something that the average woman's going to do. What this guy was doing basically was trying to, you know, um, show off to me is really what it was. It was kind of like a sexual show off, is what my opinion of that particular situation was. And I even asked him, because I was curious. After this happened, I mean, I was like appalled, but I tried to keep my composure. And then I told my brother and sister-in-law about it later. I'm like, keep your kids away from this crazy MF, you know? And anyway, but the thing that I was curious about was, I was like, well, I'm not going to say his name, do you think you're just gay or something like that? He's like, oh, no, 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 I'm totally straight. And I was just like, oh, okay, all right, well, that tells me what flavor of this weirdness you are.
So I quit.
And
Sorry.
well, no, I was just gonna say, it's like it, it 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 was like classic, as they call it, AGP behavior,
Yeah.
autogynephiles,
And
and that's what it was. It was classic AGP behavior.
and I was waiting for you to get there, Chris. I was wondering. I was like, is he going to mention it? The terminology. Sorry. So that's because actually, Vinny made a comment and he put what I just talked about in the most PC, probably not going to get you kicked off a platform terminology. Vinny said, yeah, Kevin, I've heard of something like that. Not in video form, though. Some people like what's called apparently transitioning erotica. I guess that is then the most PC way to put it, I suppose.
Is that like a
Okay.
dude putting on pantyhose or something on a video?
I assume they're probably also reading it, because erotica generally is what's read, from at least how I've seen that word used, is what you read. So I could see that also being part of that, because when you read something, your mind does more work. It actually has to create the story, visualize it. So I could see that being a much more, as much as it's disgusting, a much more effective way to manipulate someone's mind. And yeah, Vinny said it's pornography that you read. So I'm going to throw it to both of you, but I do want to mention we are at an hour and 13 minutes. We've had a blast. I want to throw this to each of you. Then I have a question from the comments for Elena that we're going to close off with, just for the humor of it. So Chris, go.
Yeah, this has been interesting, and I can't think of a better person for us to have on than Elena, for sure. Because, she, especially when we're talking about the stuff with kids, because this is something that she
Mhm.
really focuses in on. It's something that I focus in on, the stuff with kids. I mean, ultimately, when it gets down to the adults, like I said, I don't really give a damn what you want to do with yourself. You go right
Mhm.
ahead and do whatever you need to do. But at the same time, I'm not going to play your games either, you know. But so yeah, I mean that's basically it. And this Riley J. Dennis, yeah, I mean, essentially the trans activist story has not changed since this from, like, what did you say, 10 years ago? It hasn't
Yeah,
changed.
better part of a decade. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's all the same recycled BS, and so we need to. I think those of us who are actually sane people, need to make sure that we have reasonable and logical rebuttals to the stuff that they're saying. And guys, really, that shouldn't be too hard. It shouldn't be too hard, because think about how insane this person just sounded.
Hmm.
So, I mean, and how, like you said before, Kevin, how contradictory this man was of himself. So, we just need to make sure that, but here's the thing, guys, don't get emotional about it, because that's what the other side does. They get really emotional about this stuff, and they'll yell and they'll say, call you slurs and all sorts of stuff. Don't ever do that. Don't engage with it at all. I mean, I've been in plenty of situations. I mean, I was at the US Supreme Court and I had somebody sitting there heckling me the entire time that I was giving my speech at the Supreme Court. Um, the thing is, I just tuned them out and I didn't even respond to them at all. And that's what we need to do, because these people aren't even worth listening to. Honestly, they
Hmm.
really aren't. So
Yeah.
that's what I have to say.
So Elena, I mean, it's been quite an episode. It's been quite a stream, and I know there's so much more to say, but I'm gonna throw it to you to wrap up your thoughts on what we witnessed this evening, and then I have that question for you.
All right, just my wrap up thoughts are, I am also, as Chris said, a religious person. But before I was a religious person, I had this very same opinion that I'm about to share. I'd like to go back to an America when people kept their fetishes at home, where we weren't sexualizing children, where I didn't need to know that this dude Riley Dennis likes to sleep with everybody, no matter what they have under under the hood. It doesn't matter. Everybody deserves for me to be sexually attracted to them. Like, I don't care. I want everybody to just go back to being normal and keeping, some semblance of self-respect and decency. I miss that. I really do. And I get it in church, but then I come back out into the world and now I'm talking about sissification and and erotica and Reddit
It's sad. You
experiences
laugh
about
because you'll cry.
Grindr. And I will continue to try to, be a voice of decency and modesty, because we're missing it. Because this whole thing with all the constant sexualization of everybody at all times and all things, it is not working. Everybody's lost their minds.
Uh,
Yep,
Excellent.
absolutely.
Absolutely well put, Elena. So for the question, because Vinny, of course, brings up the bear topic. So Elena, we gotta ask you: are you choosing the man or the bear to be alone with in the woods?
Well, I'm choosing the man to be alone with in the woods, unless the man is in a dress and thinks he's a woman. Then I'm choosing the bear.
Well, in the spirit of Riley Dennis, though, if you choose the man, that means you hate bears and want them all dead. So, of course. No, seriously. Elena, thank you so much for coming on this evening. We will definitely have you back on in the future. There are so many ideas, honestly, in my head right now about where you'd be great. I even thought of an idea for a stream called Default Settings, just where we go over videos of what we described, and of course that queer kid stuff. Anyways, folks, thank you all for watching this evening. Please like, share, subscribe, comment. And also comment with ideas for future streams. And if you'd like to be a guest, let us know. With that, God bless you all. Have a great evening, and the weekend is quickly approaching. So have a great weekend as well, everyone. Peace out.
Thank you,
All
guys.
right. Take care, everybody.